I hope all is well as I get my life together. Welcome in, welcome in. Make sure to like the live. Don't ask me where my glasses is. I don't know. So we're gonna have to squint a lot today. I'm excited to jump on. Happy BHM, happy Black History Month. All of the things. Let me see here. Um, okay. So today is all about false urgency. Um, and really, false urgency is anxiety, right? But I wanted to talk about false urgency specifically because many times we may not even see false urgency as anxiety. We may see it as wisdom. We may see it as we're operating in an extreme amount of awareness, and that can subconsciously cause a lot of anxiety. So that's why I wanted to specifically talk about false urgency. Hi, Jay. Welcome in. Hi, Mark. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining. So a few things that I want to talk about here. And actually, I'm like, it is a little quiet. My music ain't here, but that's no problem. We can jump in. Um, okay, so I want to kind of first start with an overview of like what false urgency is and what it may look like. Thank you so much for joining. And anyone that's watching, like, is this something, as I'm reading through this, is this something that you experience? Because I feel like when we're thinking about false urgency, we're like, well, no, I don't necessarily experience it. But when I start reading this, y'all gonna be like, oh, okay, that's what she mean. Yeah, there's that. So I'll kind of define it first so that way you have a good idea. And then I'll talk about how it shows up and what areas it may show up and what that may look like to give you some examples. And then after that, I'll dive into just how you can slow down the false urgency. So, talk back to me. This is an interactive live. Feel free to ask questions if you need me to go back and repeat anything. Um, and if you have anything to add that I may have missed, feel free to share. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I'm a certified mindfulness coach and also a baby therapist. I'm currently have my first round of clients. I'm working an internship right now. So this is where all of this information is coming from. This channel is all things mindfulness, mental health, and just mindful living in general. And you may see meditations posted on our channel. I haven't posted any in a couple of weeks. I have about 200 and something meditations on this platform. So I took a little bit of a break. Okay. But we are still going live when it comes to talking about mindful living. So thank you for everyone who votes on the poll for what we talk about every Monday. I really do appreciate that. And we'll do a new poll for our next topics for February at the end of this week. So look out for that post. Okay, so now I got that out of the way. False urgency. So, what is false urgency, right? False urgency is the internal pressure to act immediately in the absence of a real time sensitive threat. Okay? So it's an internal pressure that we put on ourselves or that we allow for other people to put on ourselves in the absence of a real threat. Okay? It's the feeling that something must be handled immediately, even when there is no threat or consequence if you pause or if you wait. It's rooted in our own internal threat detection system based on what we value, what our core beliefs are, or our previous traumas or experiences. Okay? So that's really what false urgency is. False urgency is the internal pressure to act immediately in the absence of a real time sensitive threat. It's the feeling that something must be handled immediately, even when there is no real threat or consequence if you pause. All right. It's rooted in our own internal threat detection system based on what we value, our core beliefs, or our traumas and past experiences. Hi, Seaborg. Welcome in, welcome in. Okay. So I wanted to really kind of break that down because we may have our own depictions of what we think it is, but I wanted to make sure that we defined it and really gave you an understanding of what it is. Some more things that you may experience with false urgency is it happens when the brain mislabels stress or uncertainty as an immediate danger. Okay, so I'll say that again. False urgency happens when the brain mislabels stress or uncertainty as immediate danger to the point where your body feels like it's actually an immediate danger and is in your body. It may feel like, oh my god, someone has like a gun pointed to my face, when necessarily that's not actually what's happening. Is when the brain perceives a threat, whether it be social, emotional, relational, or imagined. It pushes the body into action mode, right? So this doesn't even have to be something that's happening. This could be literally a thought, right? I think something to the point where that activates my nervous system to feel like there's a threat that's actually happening and that it needs to take action and to move. And because I have perceived or thought of this threat, now my body and my actions are following suit, even though that there isn't any threat actually in front of us, right? The body then prepares to respond, even though nothing is actually happening. So it's that feeling of your heart racing, you're getting flushed, you're sweating, all of those things happening that you feel like you have to do something, but there is nothing that you actually have to do, right? So for example, you may have where someone's calling you over and over and over again to get something done, and in your body you're feeling pressure rising up to the point where your body feels like there's an actual threat and that it needs safety, right? So then now you're rushing and trying to get all of these things done, and you have this external pressure to try to make sure that happens, and now your body is flustered, now you're anxious, and now you have this huge response that and then begins to emote your emotions, and then you get frustrated and irritability and confusion and lack of clarity, and all of these things start to follow suit because of the anxiety that's building up from the body from the external pressure. Okay, I was long-winded in my explanation, but I hope this is helpful. I hope this brings some explanation and understanding of what false urgency is, especially when thinking about your own life, right? Have a few examples here. Like it may be something where you're telling yourself, I have to handle this right now. This has to be done right now, right? If I don't respond, something bad will happen, or this will happen, or that will happen, right? If I slow down, I'll fall behind. All of these things may be what we would tell ourselves in our mind. It's important to understand that feeling you feel is the nervous system asking for safety, not necessarily speed or action. Okay? I'll say that again. It's important to understand that the feeling that you feel within the nervous system is asking for safety, not necessarily speed or action. Okay? So, how does false urgency show up? I hope this is helping y'all. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if this is helping. Drop a heart in the comments if this is helping at any capacity. Um, oh, absolutely. Thank you for joining, Lindsay. I really do appreciate it. Okay, so how does it show up? There's four major ways that false urgency shows up in our body, okay, or shows up within our lives, period. So it's going to show up cognitively, so in our thoughts or thought based. It's going to show up physiologically or in our body or body based, right? It's going to show up emotionally, so within our soul or heart based. And then it's going to show up in our behavior, so in our actions and how we react to things, okay? So I'm gonna break these all down. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments if you're not quite sure what any of these things mean, but I'm going to break it all down for you, okay? So when we're thinking about cognitive, that's thought-based. This is what you may recognize. So racing and intrusive thoughts, overthinking, catastrophizing. So that's just basically thinking that everything is going to go wrong. It's either like nothing's going to happen or everything is going to go wrong. There is no in between, right? overestimating risk. So, yes, our brains are designed to determine whether something is a risk or not, but because of stress and because of all of the uncertainties and anxieties that we may be experiencing, we may overestimate our risk based off of our own previous traumas or our own previous experiences. And if you have a long history of trauma, or if you have a long history of these very negative experiences, or even just a sense of a lack of self worth or trusting self, you will begin to overestimate risk and think that risk is going to happen in spaces that is more than likely or a high probability that it's not. Right. So, overestimating risk, difficulty concentrating, or rigid all or nothing thinking, which is basically what I was saying as far as like catastrophizing. So going from one extreme to another. All right. Cognitively, it may also show up in time perception, right? So anxiety, which is just basically what false urgency is, distorts time. All right. So feeling behind even when you're not behind, rushing through moments when it's actually a time for you to remain present. Okay. Difficulty enjoying rest because of what's next. So you can't stop and take a rest or go to sleep or even just enjoy life for a little bit because you're always already anticipating what's supposed to happen next, right? Feeling that you have to remain productive all of the time, right? And the fact of the matter is just because you're busy doesn't mean that you're productive. Sometimes we get busy with stuff that don't matter and we focus on things that don't even matter, but because we're doing something, we feel like we're productive when it's actually burning us out. um, Constant future oriented thinking. So, not to say that goal setting and thinking about your future and all of these things aren't important. It actually is very important. But when you're fixated on that to where you're not even able to live life, you're just kind of autopilot and anticipating the next thing. That's when it can become false urgency or create false urgency in your life or just anxiety in general. Okay. Anxiety pulls the mind out of the present into consistent anticipation. The consistent anticipation is what's stressing us out, right? We're always anticipating the next thing instead of just sitting and living and being, present with where we are, having contentment, having a sense of gratitude, right, with where we are. And that anticipation is what's creating that rush, that urgency, that thought of I have to go. Okay, Jay, thank you. I'm glad that this is helpful. I hope so. I really do hope so. Okay, so that was thought-based cognitive thinking, time perception, but also in decision making. This is a big one, right? Anxiety narrows your options. It makes your options very minimal because of the fact that there's less time to think through everything, right? So making fast decisions to relieve discomfort. Right? Avoiding decisions altogether, right? So that's avoidance, that's procrastination. Procrastination is a coping mechanism, really, because of the fact that many times is imposter syndrome or it's all of those things, but it also could just be that you're wanting to avoid decisions altogether because of the feeling that it brings when it comes to that false urgency. So making fast decisions to relieve discomfort, avoiding decisions altogether, needing certainty before acting, which is a huge piece because not everything is going to be certain. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty in life in general. And that's when we find ourselves stagnant. That's when we find ourselves not able to move or make decisions or move forward or to take the next step because we're contextualizing everything, right? We're internalizing and trying to make sense of everything. And because something or one piece or one part of the thing doesn't make sense, we just don't do anything at all, right? And then second guessing after deciding, right? And many times, second guessing is coming because we're making decisions too quickly, right? We're trying to move so fast. And because of that, we're second guessing everything because we don't trust the time that we've spent in making that decision. Okay. So false urgency lives heavily in that. And it's that thought of, if I don't act now, I'll lose control, right? Because really, that's what anxiety is. It's a matter of control, right? And oftentimes, it's a matter of controlling things that we can't control, that we'll never be able to control. So this is a matter of reminding ourselves, like, what can I control? I know I talk about this all the time, y'all. You're probably tired of me hearing me say this, but what can I control and what I can't control? And focusing on the areas that you can and releasing the things that you cannot. That's easier said than done, but that's the premise. The battle zone. Thank you. Hello. Welcome in. Welcome in. Drop a heart in the comments if this is helping y'all. I really do hope so. I really do hope so. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so that was number one, cognitive thought based. That's one of the four major ways that false urgency will show up. Okay. So number two is physiological or body based or somatic, right? So anxiety is a bodily experience. This is something that you have to understand. If you do not get anything else on this live, if you don't understand anything else, know and understand that anxiety starts in your body. Okay. I don't know if you ever heard of the saying, the issues are in the tissues, right? The issues are in your body, within your nervous system, within your muscles, within it just lives there, right? So when it comes to the common symptoms of anxiety in the body, increased heart rate, shallow or rapid breathing, muscle tension, restlessness, chronic fatigue, GI discomfort, digestion issues, like all of those things can be associated with with stress and anxiety. Okay. Over time, anxiety becomes your normal natural state. Okay. So over time, especially if you have a lot of traumatic experiences, you had a traumatic childhood, so it's something that's following you throughout your life. Anxiety is going to become and feel normal eventually, right? It's kind of like when you walk into a room and it smells, you're like, "Ooh, it's stinking here. What is going on?" And then you're in the room for a while, then all of a sudden the smell goes away. The smell didn't leave, it's still there. And then somebody else comes in like, "Ooh, it's stinking here. You in here?" Right? It's kind of the same premise, right? So as you start being in that state of anxiety for a long period of time, your body will not know the difference and understand anxiety to be your natural state. So as you start to work through anxiety and you no longer feel it all the time, that in itself becomes discomfort. And then that causes false urgency, which then brings you back to the anxious state, right? So it's a never ending cycle, and it's the understanding that it lives in the body is the first thing that you want to understand in order to start breaking yourself from that anxious cycle. I kind of went off there, but I wanted to explain that because I think people don't understand how much our bodies are associated with anxiety and stress, and we have no especially when you have no explanation for your anxiety and stress, it's in the body, right? So other states of anxiety in the body, chronic busyness, difficulty sitting still. That could be just be ADHD, but ADHD, there's a form of anxiety with ADHD. Feeling silence with noise or tasks. If silence is bothersome for you, that's a huge indicator that anxiety lives in your body. Anxiety and stress lives in the body. Automatically saying yes without thinking, just to kind of go with the punches versus making logical or rational decisions. Feeling uneasy when nothing is wrong, feeling uneasy all of the time, right? Never really having a sense of comfort, and always trying to seek comfort, right? If you're consistently seeking comfort, you never have a feeling of, okay, I'm okay, I'm content, right? I'm relaxed. Never having that feeling ever, that's a state that's an indicator, I should say, that anxiety is living in the body. Okay. The body learns urgency as a default state, just like I was saying earlier, eventually, if you live life continuously that way, your body is going to see anxiety as familiarity, and then it then becomes your natural state. You will stay in that state because it's comfortable now. Sorry, y'all. I've been talking all day. Been talking all day. Okay, so that was number two. False urgency shows up as a body base or in the body. Please do not forget that, y'all. Number three, false urgency shows up emotionally within your soul or is heart based. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. And your soul or is heart based. So anxiety is often mislabeled as other emotions, right? So it may show up as irritability, overwhelm, impatience, emotional reactivity, or the just big emotions or sudden big emotions, right? Feeling on edge or unsafe. Sometimes we just say, oh, I just feel so overwhelmed or I feel overstimulated, right? We may say that often. And that's most likely because of the fact that we are experiencing anxiety or that false urgency, but we don't know what to call it. So we call it something else, right? Oftentimes when you're overstimulated is because there's of course a lot of things happening at one time, but most of those things are happening up here. It's our mindset, it's our thought patterns, it's our and then that, reflects our actions. So and then the actions add more irritability, overwhelm, impatience, and just that emotional reactivity. Okay. So understanding that we can mislabel our emotions by especially when it's false urgency and it kind of just goes under the radar and we never address it. Okay, it also is attached to our identity and self-worth. So anxiety can attach to your core beliefs, whether it be productivity equals worth, right? So if I'm not productive, then I have no worth, right? So sometimes that core belief can create a false urgency where I need to be doing something all the time. And if I'm not, then I'm not worth. I don't have any worth, right? I'm not worthy of whatever is happening within my life because I don't feel productive, right? You may see that experience when someone is laid off, or you may see that experience after a breakup, right? Or when kids leave the nest and you're a little bit older and now you don't have a sense of worth because you're not productive with doing all of the things that you have to do for the kids. If you see this a lot with women who stay at home and work from home. I mean, that are at home moms, right? And they're home based and they're not necessarily have a job, but they're focused on their kids. The kids go off to school now to what do I do with my life, right? I'm not productive. So that means that I have no worth. So that's a core belief that we may have consciously or subconsciously that causes the false urgency, right? And then it's not even identifying that core belief, but it's also identifying where that core belief came from. Who told you that you were not worthy because you're not productive? Is it something I told myself? Did that come from a parent? Did that come from friends? Did that come from my teachers? Where did that start? Okay. So it's not just thinking about the core belief, but also where it started. And having the awareness of that isn't necessarily saying it will fix it right away. It just brings awareness of, okay, this is where it comes from. This is something that I can remind myself, okay, this isn't necessarily something I have to be urgent about. This is just a core belief that I have to dismantle. Okay. So that was only that. Which one was that? I did productivity equals worth. Rest equals laziness, right? So sometimes it's hard for us to rest because we feel like, or we were told, right? So understanding the core belief and then understanding where it came from, thinking that rest is lazy, right? So if I have to take a break, or if I need to eat some food and take a break and sit down, or if I need to go to sleep and take a nap, we may have a core belief of, oh no, that's laziness. So then therefore we don't rest. We continue restlessness. We're always tired, always fatigued, always burned out because we don't take a break. right? So that's another core belief that you could have. And if that's the case, how can you combat that, right? How can you reframe or change that thought process? Um, Another core belief for your self worth could be that slowness is failure. Moving too slow or not meeting a certain pace equates to failure, right? That's another core belief that we could be telling ourselves that's creating more false urgency, right? So I wanted to give examples because I know that this can be a theory of things that could be happening, but we don't necessarily know how to apply it to our life. I wanted to give you some examples, but if there's any other core beliefs that you can think of, and if you really want to dive into this, I suggest journaling it. Like, what are my core beliefs surrounding productivity? What is my core belief surrounding rest? What is my core belief surrounding just work in general? Like thinking about the things that you tell yourself, and you may not come up with it right away, and maybe something that you will think about on the go and you're on your way to work and you have a thought, you're like, oh, you know what, that's a core belief, that's something that I just believe either consciously or subconsciously, and start to journal them. And then once you figure them out and you start listing them, then you can think of the counter. You can think of affirmations that you can put in there or plug in there and say, no, this is a lie, this is something a lie that I tell myself, and this ain't it, right? um and then just understanding too, when you're thinking about these core beliefs, especially the ones that I listed, this is how we get to high functioning depression, right? This is how we get to burnout. This is how we get to that hyper productivity and people, passing out, or people having these episodes of not eating or just trying to just hyper work, and it gets to a point where you burn yourself out, and it's frustrating, y'all, and it continues on a cycle. It keeps going until you do something about it. Does society play a part of our make? Absolutely. That's a beautiful question. Yes, it does. Because, and I can only speak to the American aspect of it. I don't know what countries are here, but when it comes to the Americanized version of what productivity is, it's unnatural, y'all. Like if you think about other countries and how their workforce is, and then you look at the American workforce, and I guess it's just capitalism or whatever. We are stressed all the time. Corporate America is stressed. I did a study on this and have even put together like workshops and things for corporate America specifically, because there are just staggering statistics of those who are in corporate America or just working in America in general, that we are highly depressed, highly anxious. And there is so much that happens to us within our mental health and our psyche just with our workforce alone. We ain't even get to home. So yes, how society portrays what work ethics should look like. Now it is, I will say it is starting to evolve and change as mental health becomes a bigger topic. But if you have been in the workforce for a long period of time, I would say over maybe even 5 to 6 years, then you have already received some of the damage, right? And as Gen Z is really entering the workforce, they're kind of evolving and changing how we work, because it's broken. The system is broken, and it needs to evolve and change. So yes, society definitely plays a part. I also think social media culture has a big thing to do with it too, because when you get on TikTok or you go on social media, get on Instagram or get on whatever social media that you're on, all you're doing is scrolling, and it's people telling you things that you need to do, right? It's like you scroll one time, okay, you need to work out every day and for an hour in the morning. Then you scroll again, and then it's like, oh, you need to work on your mental health. And then you scroll again, and then you got to do this and you got to do that. And all of that creates false urgency, right? Is it good information? Yes. Even this live, right? I'm telling you all of the things, right? But could this create some sense of false urgency if you go about it in a way that is anxious? Yeah. But this is a matter of finding ways to slow down, mindfulness and just talking about being more mindful is helping you to understand, like, even though I have all of these things happening at one time, I have to be intentional and strategic in slowing myself down, right? And it's all about, yes, I have all of these things happening, but it's about taking the meat and throwing the bones away, right? Sometimes when we're digesting what's happening in our environments and in society, we eat the meat and the bones when we really have to throw the bones out, right? So take the meat, throw the bones away, move at your pace. Okay. So even with the information that I'm giving you today, you don't have to take action on this and do all of this today, tonight. Okay. It's about taking it piece by piece and integrating it into your lifestyle. And that's going to take time. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to seek perfection. Don't try to implement everything at one time. Just take one little piece and then add it and then try that for a bit and then take something else and then add it and then move it. And then if something doesn't apply, then if it don't apply, let it fly. Okay. Take the meat, throw the bones away. I hope that answered your question. I hope this is helpful, y'all. And I don't know what number I'm on. But we're gonna figure it out. All right. So we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about identity and self-worth. Spiritual. So we're still on the emotional aspect of things. So this was number 3, emotional, soul, and heart base. We talked about mislabeling the emotions. We talked about identity and self-worth. Now we're going to move to the spiritual meaning or meaning making. Okay. And this is still in number 3. So for many people, anxiety shows up as feeling disconnected from trust or faith, struggling with surrender, right? Believing everything depends on you versus allocating what belongs to others, and then difficulty resting in uncertainty. All right. So false urgency, if I don't manage everything, things will fall apart, right? If that's something that you tell yourself, right? If that's something that you tell yourself consistently, then that means that your meaning making means I'm making meaning out of me doing everything. And if I'm not doing everything, then I have no meaning. Okay. So if I'm not doing everything, I'm disconnected. If I'm not doing anything, then then there's difficulty when it comes to rest. If I try to pull back, I can't rest. I'm still sitting in my anxiety and anxiousness. So I might as well just do it anyway. Right. So thinking about how spiritually that may show up for you. If you are someone that is in faith or has a faith, then thinking how that shows up for you there. If you're someone that doesn't necessarily subscribe to a faith but has values, thinking about how it shows up there. Okay, so spirituality is a big thing, right? And it shows up for people differently. So, how you would approach this portion would be based off of what you believe. I personally am Christian, so mine is going to be a little bit more Christian based, but that may not be what you subscribe to, right? I challenge you to try God. I do challenge you to do that. But that's everyone's free will and decision on what they want to do, according to spirituality. Okay. So that was number 3, emotional, soul, or heart based. Number 4, behavioral. This is the big one, y'all. This is the big one. Behavioral, or your actions based, right? So this is where people don't realize anxiety is present. So overworking, right? If you're working, some people have to work 10 to 12 hours a day, but some people choose to work 10 to 12 hours a day. Okay. So overworking, over preparing. Sometimes we prepare so much that it keeps us stagnant, right? And we tell ourselves, oh, I'm being wise, I'm just preparing myself. But there's only so much preparing you can do. Okay. So over preparing, difficulty resting, that restlessness, the insomnia, right? Especially the unexplainable insomnia, that laying down and saying, like, I'm exhausted, but I just cannot go to sleep. There's a reason for that. The reason is anxiety and stress. Um, I was in confinement for 10 years, the lights left on all night and constant noise. How does it impact my feelings wanting to make up for lost time? So it can impact your feelings in different ways. Um I think it just kind of depends on where your mindset is now, where if you feel like you're wanting to make up for lost time, is that a possibility, right? Is that actually something that you can control? And there may be a sense of grief there that you have to process, of grieving those years that you may have lost. And then understanding that, hey, I may not be able to make up for that time, but I could do what can I do now, right? And sometimes we spend so much time thinking about the lost time versus putting the time and effort into what you can do now. And once you start putting in that effort of, okay, what can I do now? What can I accomplish now? What are the things that I want to go for? What are the values that I want to exhibit moving forward? What did those 10 years teach me? And based off of what those 10 years taught me, how can I show up now to make good of that, right? Um and focusing your energy there versus focusing your energy on like what you've lost. And I think that a lot of times it's kind of like the concept of the glasses half empty or half full. Like really thinking about like, okay, I have the gratitude of I'm out and I'm able to do things now. And what can I do with that time now? Or, progressing and thinking about what you've lost. When we sit and ponder on what we've lost, that creates depression, that creates anxiety, that creates a sense of grief and continued loss, right? And then new losses, right? Because now you're spending the time thinking about the old when you could be focused on the new. I hope that makes sense. And I hope that's not too harsh because I know that coming out of a that type of situation is very difficult, and getting acclimated back to society is very hard. But there's only so much that you can do, and it's about focusing on what that is. What can I do now? Where can I go now? What values can I push forward now? Um, and letting go and releasing what was lost. Because was it really a loss? Would you be able to get to a point now where you're even having the awareness that you have now without that, right? So just really thinking about it in with a different perspective, um, instead of focusing on what is lost. Okay, I hope that answered your question, the battle zone. If not, feel free to follow up with another question. But I hope that was helpful. Um, where was I at, y'all? Behavioral and action. So overworking, over preparing, difficulty resting, avoidance, which we talked about, that procrastination, reassurance seeking. So we spend a lot of time trying to get reassurance from others before we take action versus us just believing and moving forward and progressing. Constant doing to relieve discomfort. That's kind of like where, if someone loses someone, maybe like a death or like divorce or something, they try to keep themselves busy. That may work for a certain period of time, but you may eventually break down at a certain point. So if I stay busy, I won't feel anxious. And that's not necessarily the case, because once you are finished being busy, the anxiousness will still come back. Um, Thank you. It's so funny. Everybody be labeling me. Listen, I know I want to go get my PhD. I haven't finished my master's yet. So we got to take it one step at a time. We got to take it one step at a time. All right. So where was I at? Okay. So that was behavioral and action. So we talked about what actions or behaviors show up. Relational and interpersonal. This is the big one, y'all. So where are we at with time? Okay, we good with time. Okay. Relational and interpersonal. So anxiety often shows up between people, not just inside of yourself, right? So oftentimes we have that false urgency that we receive because we are surrounded in environments and people that are anxious centered. Okay. So feeling pressure to respond immediately to texts and emails, over explaining or people pleasing, right? Over explaining yourself, over explaining your no's, right? Over explaining your yeses, right? Fear of disappointing others. So because we don't want to disappoint someone, we create a false urgency within ourselves to do whatever it is they want us to do in order to keep them happy. Difficulty tolerating difficulty tolerating silence or ambiguity in relationships, right? So uh, if you go a few weeks not speaking to someone, now all of a sudden you have in your head all of these thoughts of, oh, they don't like me anymore, they don't want to talk to me, something happened, all of these things, right? So that difficulty tolerating silence, flexibility, maybe they just had something going on, maybe it's, there's so many things that could be happening. Feeling responsible for others' emotions, hyperactive responsibility for other people's emotions, right? Again, people pleasing. Okay. Sometimes we see the emotions of others and we instantly take it on as our responsibility to manage their emotions. I know I've probably said this maybe 50,000 times in the last 3 lives, but it's not our job to manage the emotions of others. It's their job to self regulate. It's your job to self regulate. You may support them, but not manage them. Okay. Um, so when it comes to the battle zone, that's me. Yeah, me too. It shows up for me too. I'm not understanding the connection, the definition of false urgency and productivity equals worth. So when it comes to the connection, right? So when you have productivity and with the way that you may view productivity, you may have a hyperactive version of what productivity means. And because we have that hyperactive version of what productivity is supposed to look like, when we're not meeting that standard, we have an urgency to try to meet that standard because of the fact that we don't feel like we have worth if we don't. Right. So if I say, and I'll give you like a very simplified example. So if I say, my version of productivity is me working 10 hours a day, right? And if I go through my days and I work 10 hours a day every day, and then I get home, I'm like, I was productive today because I worked 10 hours a day, right? Then you get to one day and you only worked 8 hours a day that day, right? And for whatever reason, you were flustered, things didn't happen the way that you thought it was going to happen. You only worked 8 hours a day. Now you internally feel like you have no worth because of the fact that you only worked 8 hours a day, right? And so now the next day you work 15 hours that day to try to make up with the day before when it's not necessarily you didn't have a worth. It just means that you needed rest, right? So that's like a very simplified version of how it connects, but it's a matter of creating urgency where there wasn't necessarily urgency needed, right? Did you need to work 15 hours a day today? No, not necessarily. It kind of depends, but it's a matter of understanding where you're creating urgency in your life, where that urgency is needed and where it's not needed. Where it's not needed is what creates the continued anxiety. I hope that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Mark? I hope so. Um, let me, where was I at? Relational and interpersonal. Fear, discipline. Yes, we went through that. Okay. So we talked about the 4 areas that false urgency shows up, right? We talked about it showing up um, cognitively or thought based, physiological or body based, emotional, the soul or heart based, and then spiritual. I mean, not spiritual, that's still heart based. Let me go back. And then behavioral, that's where we're at. Behavioral action based. Okay. So, how do we slow down false urgency? That's the final question, right? Oh, of course. No problem, Mark. Of course. So, how do we slow it down? How we with time? We getting there. All right. How do we slow it down? How do we slow down false urgency? We interrupt the speed. Okay. That's simple and plain. We interrupt the speed. False urgency lives in speed, right? So pause rather than act. Finding ways to pause and really reflect on why this thing is urgent, right? What is the threat? Asking yourself, why do I feel this is so urgent? Why does this feel so threatening, right? Why does it feel so unsafe that I'm not moving in this space right here, right now, right? And it's going to take a little bit of reflection, especially if this is a new concept for you, but taking the time to pause and say, why do I need to move so quickly? I'll give you guys an example. There are times when, and I still experience this, but I can catch it now, but there's times where I rush when I don't have to, right? Like you may be going over to a friend's house and it's like, or you're going to, a party or whatever, and you're rushing as if you're going to work. That's kind of like what how that can show up, right? So I started doing intentional no rush days. So it was basically a day where, I mean, usually it's like a Saturday or a Sunday. It's a day that I pick where I'm not going to rush. I'm going to wake up when I want to wake up. I'm going to, do the things throughout the day that I need to do at no rush. Okay, I got to wash today. I'm not going to rush. Okay, I got to make dinner today. I'm going to take my time with it. Practicing, I had to practice not to rush because I lived a life where I always was in a rush. And even with eating, it would take me literally like 5, 10 minutes to eat. And I'm like, why am I rushing to eat my food? Like I have more than enough time to eat. But because I have trained or conditioned myself, I think I kind of blame this on public schooling because you really don't have a lot of time to eat when you're in high school and stuff. But I found myself rushing for no reason. And that creates anxiety that is invisible because it's something that you're naturally doing. So, thinking about ways that you can, when you find something feeling so urgent when it's not, finding ways to interrupt the speed. Okay. Um, Number two, ground the body and replace the right now language. Okay. Very informative. Thank you for making, yes. Oh, yes. And I'm going to save this so that way you guys can come back to it. But ground the body and replace right now language. All right. Because a lot of times we create the false urgency by saying this needs to happen now. This needs to happen like, or at this time, or this needs to be get done. And if it doesn't get done, and then we have this spiral. It just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. So ground your body and replace right now language. So grounding the body is one, understanding, like I said with before, if you don't take anything else from this life, take this away. Anxiety lives in the body. All right. So grounding your body is how you can then in turn ground the anxiety. Okay. Especially if you start noticing how anxiety shows up in your body, the more you are aware of that, then you'll know exactly what to do in order to ground the body quickly. But the only way that you're going to know how to do that is to try different things, right? So the easiest way to ground the body is your breath work because of the fact that the first thing that happens when you're anxious is that you hold your breath. You either hold your breath or you end up getting your breath gets really shallow, right? And you start breathing faster. You're trying to catch your breath or you feel like you're out of breath, right? So deep breathing is a way that you can instantly ground yourself and to ground your body because the way that when you're doing your deep breathing, especially in through your nose and out through your mouth, that activates your nervous system. And your nervous system is where that anxiety lives. That is your threat detection, right? So if your nervous system is telling your body that there's a threat and there is no threat, the only way to slow that down is by slowing down your breathing. So that's why breath work is important. And then replacing the right now language. So, do I have to handle this right now? Can I return to this in a more regulated state? Right? Because sometimes getting things done when you are in that state makes things more irritable, frustrating, overwhelming. Right? So, is it something I can handle now, or is this something that I can handle when I'm more regulated? Right? Is it something that you can write down to do later or add to a checklist? Checklist save me, right? Because there's a lot of things that I tell myself that I have to do right now. I'm like, you know what? I actually don't have to do it right now. Let me write it down and I can come back to it, right? Writing it down gives you a sense of it regulates my nervous system actually when I write it down, because then it's like, okay, I don't have to do it now, but I have it here so that way I remind myself that I need to do it. Setting reminders on your phone, having allotted or blocked time to get certain things done, so that way it starts to relax your nervous system. Okay. If I'll fall behind, maybe something that you're telling yourself, I'm allowed to, instead of saying that, I'm allowed to move at a sustainable pace, right? You don't have to rush to get these things done, especially if it's not an immediate threat. Now, there are some things you're like, okay, I got it. If I don't do it now, it ain't gonna happen. I get it. That's one thing. But if you're doing that to yourself consistently, day in and day out, it can create anxiety, y'all. So that was number two, ground the body and replace right now language. And then number three, this is the last one, separate urgency from importance. Okay. Separate urgency from importance. Not everything important is urgent, and everything we feel as urgent isn't necessarily important. Okay. I'll say that again. Not everything important is urgent, and everything we feel as urgent isn't necessarily important. Discomfort doesn't always equate to danger. All right. Sometimes when we feel uncomfortable, that uneasiness, we automatically feel like is supposed to create a sense of urgency to do something about it. And that's not necessarily the case. Uncomfortability is something that you want to get a little bit more comfortable with, because growth, becoming better, change, evolving, changing habits, all of that is uncomfortable, right? And if our body feels uncomfortability, especially if your natural state is anxiety and you're starting to pull yourself out of that peace, that silence, that slower pace may feel uncomfortable, and then we may subconsciously equate that to being dangerous, right? Within our nervous system, within our body. We may not even think it, but our bodies may feel that way, which then creates the false urgency, right? It's a never-ending cycle. Well, I'm not gonna say never ending, because you can end it, and we're already talking about how you can end it. But I'm just saying it's a cycle that just keeps going to the point where you have to stop it. It's like a ball that's just rolling, rolling, and rolling and rolling, and you have to just put your foot up and stop the brakes. Okay. So separating urgency from importance. Is this time sensitive or emotionally sensitive? All right. Separating the two. Is this time sensitive or is this emotionally sensitive? Am I moving this urgent because I want my emotions to be a certain way? Or am I moving this fast because it actually is time sensitive and I need to take care of it right now? Differentiating the two. All right. So ask yourself, is this time sensitive or emotionally sensitive? Another question you can ask yourself is, what actually happens if this waits for an hour or for a day? You get giving whatever time limit, right? What actually happens if this waits? Number three, who is setting the timeline? Am I setting the timeline? Is the thing or the situation setting the timeline? Is another person setting the timeline? Where is the timeline coming from? And then another two more questions. What am I afraid will happen if I slow down, if I pause, right? What fears are attached to this? All right. And then, is this pressure coming from the present or is it coming from a past survival pattern? All right. Is the pressure coming from the present or is it coming from a past survival pattern? Why do I feel like this pressure needs to be taken care of right now? Is this from a past trauma? Is it from a past experience? Is it just because I experienced it with this person and now that it's happening with this person, I feel like I have to do it the same way, right? Thinking about all of those things. So that is what I have, y'all. That was number three, urgency. Separate urgency from importance. I hope that this was helpful. Just a few things to end out here. Anxiety doesn't live in the mind. It recognizes how we relate to time, people, decisions, and even ourselves. All right. Anxiety doesn't just live in the mind, it reorganizes how we relate to time, people, decisions, and even ourselves. When anxiety becomes familiar, urgency can feel normal, even when it isn't necessary. All right. So I hope that this brings some understanding to false urgency related to anxiety. False urgency is definitely something that goes under the radar. And I wanted to do this specifically because I've done several anxiety lives. For anybody that's been following me for a while, I've done so many anxiety lives. But this is something that I worked through with a client that I felt needed to be really talked about because it goes so far under the radar to where we don't understand why we're experiencing urgency and while we're experiencing so much anxiety. And it's so multifaceted, it's so layered, you guys. But understanding these core concepts, I think, is a great start. And then finding ways to apply it to your life is crucial and critical. But pace yourself, y'all. Don't be out here trying to be perfect, trying to apply all this, because it's a lot. All right, it was a lot to write and to and to type out. So I know it's gonna be a lot to digest and to apply. So chew on this, eat the meat, throw the bones away, like I said. And we'll leave you with a affirmation. So I release false urgency and move with clarity, not panic. I release false urgency and move with clarity, not panic. I release false urgency and move with clarity, not panic. God bless y'all. I hope all is well. I pray for everybody that watches any of my content. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope this brings some type of solace. I hope this brings something that you can take away and take action on. Again, if this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I am a certified mindfulness coach and an therapist intern right now. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Why not? Y'all been here. Okay, subscribe. All right. Make sure to check out some of the meditations and breath work on the channel. There are so many different variations. That's why I kind of took a break. I was like, I need to take a break from meditations and the recording because there's so many on here. So that way I can regroup and think of some other ideas. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, go to our website. It's haveninspired.com. Sign up for the newsletter that goes out every Wednesday. And I do events, y'all. I do both events, virtual and in person. I'm in the Chicagoland area. But if you're looking for someone to come and do any type of workshops regarding mindfulness, mindful living, especially mindfulness in the workplace, I've been doing several different events for corporate situations. So definitely reach out to me. You can email me at info@haveninspired.com. You're welcome, Lindsay. Peace and blessings to you too, Battle Zone. Of course, Mark, thank you so much. And Justin, welcome in. Thank you. And thank you so much, Lindsay. This live is every Monday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please come back. I enjoy having you guys in. Next week's, we will talk about, what are we going to talk about next week? Oh, you know what? I'm putting up a new poll. So I'll put up a new poll on usually Friday or Saturday. I'll put up a new poll for our next topic. So look out for that. And then you can vote on what we're going to talk about on Monday and the coming weeks. And yeah, happy Black History Month, y'all.